everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another Poshmark video. Today's video is going to be on handling Poshmark cases, how to handle them when they're opened up against you, and ways to prevent them from actually being opened up on you. If you've been a seller on Poshmark for a while, if you made a couple hundred transactions, you've probably experienced a return request or a case opened. It just happens. It's how it works. Some people don't experience them, and if you never have, that's awesome. But if you have, that doesn't make you a terrible seller. It's honestly the luck of the draw. It's the type of buyer that you probably had, the type of customer, or the type of situation that you were in. So I think it's important that people who make these kind of videos or give out any type of advice, that they are as transparent as possible. So I'm going to be transparent and say that I've had 5 cases opened up against me on Poshmark. And out of those 5, 3 of them were won in my favor because they were just a fit issue. And the majority of the time, Poshmark sides with the seller in that situation. They say that, they don't accept returns for fit. And I think that's an awesome thing that Poshmark implemented. Now, unfortunately, the 2 cases that I lost have actually happened after Poshmark had rolled out that new chat feature. So it's now October 2018. So if you're watching this later on down the road and there's a new way to handle return cases and things like that, then obviously this is an old way, but I'm going to talk about it because it's current. Prior to them rolling out the new chat feature, when you had cases opened up against you, you really didn't know why it was opened up against you. So you kind of had to write out this entire paragraph stating what you knew about your item and everything that went along with it, and prayed and hoped and crossed fingers, eyes, and toes that you were going to win the case. So I later found out after I won the cases that it was because of fit. So the earnings were released to me, and the buyer was stuck with the item. They could reposh it or whatever they wanted to do with it. So the next 2 cases that I lost, one of them was because there was undisclosed damage on the item. And it is a very tricky situation, because I don't really want to get into that case because it frustrates me every time I think about it. But some buyers can be malicious, not all of them. So we'll just leave that one at that. And then the second case that was opened up against me was for fit. However, this one was a little bit different, and I'll explain why in a minute. So, I feel like it's very important to state the facts when you're pleading your case. So when the buyer opens up the case, they're going to be able to submit photos. They're going to be able to say whatever it is that they need to say, and they're going to give the reason why that they're returning the item or trying to return the item. So whenever you read it, you've cooled your head down a little bit, you've gained your composure, you went back into your listing, and seen, made sure, double check that you put all the necessary information in there. You can go back into the comments and you can basically fight it from there. It's important to stick to the facts. So everything that's in your listing, all the pictures, the description, the title, the colors, everything that you wrote down, make sure that transfers over to your comments. Make sure you're not adding anything in last minute, or you're saying, oh yes, of course, I forgot this, that, and the other, because that's not going to matter. All that Poshmark wants to know is, are you sticking to what you wrote in your listing? And the majority of the time, yeah, it's going to be exactly what's in the listing. Because if you leave out something, like let's say you left out that there was a stain in the pocket or something like that, it's not gonna look good if you say, oh yeah, I just forgot to list that, or I forgot to mention that, because at that point you've lost the case because you forgot to. Or the sizing was off because you didn't put any measurements or anything like that. It's situations like that. But you want to keep your cool. That's another thing you want to do, is you want to take emotion out of it. And I know that some of us, we hang on to these items and we sell them and we're really happy to get rid of them, and then there's a case open or somebody doesn't like it the way that you intended, and you're like, why? Don't take it personal. Understand that the buyer wants to have as good of an experience as you want to have as a seller. So they want to get their money's worth. They're the ones who are actually spending their money on this item, so you can make a profit or so you can get money back for it. They're trying to shop. They're trying to get their item. Yes, there are some buyers out there, and I mean, come on, this is well known throughout the reseller community. There are some buyers out there who do try to scam people, and I really hate that word, but they do try to scam people to get money back or to get this, that, and the other. And it does happen, but not every buyer is like that. So kind of take that mentality out of there when it comes to arguing your case. Just stick to the facts and take emotion out of it. So the whole situation with the sizing, it happened with the dress. The buyer reported that the sizing was different from the listing. However, I put that the dress was a size small in the photos, in the title, in the description. And I even put measurements. The buyer even acknowledged in the argument that they read the measurements, understood the measurements, saw the sizing, understood the sizing, and yet they still opened it because it didn't fit. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Without me knowing or without my knowledge, I guess the dress that I had been shrunk by, previously. And I didn't know that because I didn't wear that dress. That wasn't my dress. I was trying to sell it. So, of course, that was a gamble that I took, and that was a gamble that the buyer took. Then the buyer started saying that she knew for a fact it was shrunk, and then this, that, and the other. So here's what I did. Again, I stuck to the facts. So I read everything that the buyer said, and I in turn repeated those words to Poshmark. When you're working your case, address Poshmark. It's a lot easier if you address Poshmark rather than address the buyer, because if you address the buyer, it kind of sounds more personal. If you address Poshmark, it sounds a little bit more professional. That's just my take on that. So I said the buyer purchased the dress, having read the measurements, having read the size, having understood everything that I wrote in the description, and they are now asking for a return. So, or I said something like that. I don't think I said that. But I did say that the buyer read the description, she understood it, all that, yada, yada, yada. And then the buyer came back and said something else. And then I said, okay, however, the buyer purchased the dress. So I kept repeating that over and over again. Every time the buyer would comment, I would repeat the fact that she knew what she was buying. So, Poshmark was kind of there, they asked for additional photos and things like that. Then the buyer became frustrated and I totally understand it. I totally do. But then the buyer became personal with everything. And then I feel like this is the part where it kind of got even more tricky, is the buyer took pictures of her measurements trying to compare it to my measurements. And I noticed there were a lot of inconsistencies with all of her measurement photos, even when Poshmark requested additional measurement photos. And I made a note of that. And I knew that I probably was going to lose the case just because of that. And this is where a lot of people say, well, this is why I don't list measurements, because it can work against you. However, I have had hundreds of transactions on Poshmark, and this is the first time, knock on wood, this is the first time I've ever had problems with measurements. So I don't think it's me. I think it was just the whole situation. So again, I stuck with the facts. I then took all of her photos and I screenshotted them and I saved them because I had an idea I was going to lose this case. And lo and behold, I did. However, I felt like I still showed a whole lot of poise, a whole lot of professionalism by keeping it strictly to the facts and not putting any personal spins in there. No personal attacks toward the buyer. No matter how much they were, coming at me and saying things to me, I never once addressed them in a rude manner. I always kept it professional. I think that's very, very important to do. And on that note, it got to the point where I was commenting and trying to rebuttal so much that Poshmark said that I exceeded my comment allotment. So I don't necessarily know how many comments you can leave before they say that you can't comment anymore. But I feel like that is something that Poshmark kind of needs to work on, because if you're a seller who has nothing to to hide, you should be able to fight it as much as you need to. I don't think it's very fair that a buyer has an advantage over you in that situation. However, that's a different thing, that I'll probably email Poshmark about. So anyways, the buyer won that situation. What I did when they returned the item to me is I immediately, when I received it, took photos of my measurements the way that I had them in the listing. And her measurements were completely off. It was plain to me that she, misrepresented and, kind of askewed the dress a little bit just so that she could get the return. And I think at that point, Poshmark had their hands full and they had to accept the return because she was stating that my measurements were wrong. So I feel like that's where things got a little bit And so I'm not faulting Poshmark at all for that, and I am disappointed that I lost that case, but I had a feeling as soon as she did that I was going to lose the case. So what I did was I took the photos of the measurements and I uploaded them to Poshmark. I opened up a case on her, and that's when I said, I believe the buyer took photos of the measurements in this fashion, blah, 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 in order for her to enable a return. So basically I called her a liar without calling her a liar. So Poshmark then came back a couple of hours later and they said because they didn't know who was in the right and the wrong in this situation, they were just going to credit me $10 and they were going to refund the buyer. But they were going to make a note that of this situation. So should she do something like this again, Poshmark's going to be like, well, you already did this once, so you're probably not going to win this case because you've already done it before. So that's a good thing. I'm really happy that Poshmark had, that in mind with the whole situation. Now, I really wish things had gone a little bit different, but I'm really, really glad that I was able to go back and forth with the buyer in that situation. So again, just stick to the facts. No matter how frustrating a case can be, stick to the facts. Another thing is don't take it personal. Don't put your feelings into it. I understand that opening cases are frustrating, but do know that a lot of these buyers, the good majority of these buyers, just want to have a really good experience. So here's some ways that I have found that have kept things from, escalating or cases being opened up against me. Have plenty of pictures. As many pictures as you possibly can, even if you have to make collages, because I know they allot you 8 pictures, but in the past I have made collages, especially if it's like a really expensive looking dress or something that, is a really big ticket item. I have to have plenty of pictures. Make sure you have the size tag on there. Make sure that you have all flaws photographed, that all stains, everything, all scuffs, all of that nonsense. When it comes to shoes, try to put the size picture in there as well. Try to take the picture of the soles, the fronts of the shoes, the sides of the shoes, everything you possibly can. When it comes to jeans, try to take a picture of the crotch area. Again, sizing the backs, the legs, everything. Take a picture of every single little thing. Make your list, make your title as long as you possibly can. Use up all of those words. Don't just write nice dress, size small, because, make sure that you put, there's certain things. If it's flawed, you can also put that in the title. Say flawed in big bold letters, and then write it again in the description. You can use measurements. You don't have to. I know that this case that I lost was, due to the buyer manipulating the measurements a little bit. However, measurements have worked in my favor because I don't have quite as many people asking me, can you take a measurement of this? Can I have this? Can I have that? So I think it's, and there's love notes left that fits exactly how I wanted it to fit. So I think that's amazing. Measurements do work in your favor a lot of the times. Have measurements, especially when it comes to pants. Make sure you have inseams in there, out seams, you have rises, you have waists, even the circumference around the leg, all of that stuff. Let's see, another thing. Oh, I'm thinking of all these things. Oh, when it comes to colors, don't put an exact color because I know there's some people who will use that against you. And I'm not trying to say that buyers are terrible because I'm a buyer on Poshmark as well. What I'm trying to say is if you say it's a grape purple, and somebody's like, that's not grape, that's like a eggplant or something, you know, they can open up a case and say that you lied about the color. Just say it's in the purple family, or say it's in the blue family. If it's in between purple and blue, put both colors. When it comes to listing and you have the option to pick 2 colors, pick a blue and a purple, but then put in the description, it's kind of a blue, it's kind of a purple, it's in that purple blue family. Save your behind that way. If it's new with tags, take a picture of the tag. You don't have to take a picture of the price tag that's on there, but take a picture of the tag with the item. That way that the buyer can actually see that, yes, it is in fact new with tags items. If you're using stock photos, make sure the item that you're selling is the same item in the stock photo, because there will be some people who will look at the cover shot, because you have one shot to impress people, and that's the cover shot. That's the one that makes everyone click on your listing. Some people will look at the cover shot and say, oh, this is a gorgeous outfit, and then they won't look at any of the other photos. They'll just read the description, they'll read the price and purchase it, then they get it and they're like, this is not what was in the stock photo. Make sure the item that's in the stock photo is the exact item that you're selling. Whether it be the same color, the same cut, the same style, make sure it's the same thing, because again, that could be very misleading and you can get a case opened up against you. So those are just a few ways to prevent cases from being opened up against you. And those are a few ways to kind of handle cases, whether you lose them or you win them. Just, again, stick with the facts, keep emotions out of it, keep it professional. Even if you don't do this professionally, it's very important to paint yourself in a good light on Poshmark, because Poshmark thrives on that positivity. That's their brand. That's what they want. They want everybody to have a great experience, and I'm totally on board with that whole, great experience situation. So I hope you like this video, and I hope everybody's having a wonderful experience on Poshmark. Just know that when there's a case opened up against you, it's not the end of the world. It's a small thing. And if you have a whole bunch of love notes and you have a whole bunch of wonderful transactions, don't let that one bad apple spoil the whole bunch, right? All right. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.